Hello and welcome back, I'm Lincoln, and today it's only about 40 degrees Fahrenheit in my shed, which puts it about 5 degrees Celsius, which is obviously much too cold to 3D print, with resin anyway. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try out the thermal vat band. It's a product I found. I've been looking around for a while trying to come up with something or some way. I didn't really want to leave just a portable heater in an enclosure and walk away from it. I didn't really want to do the I've seen a lot of people use the fermentation bands around here, and then I came across this thermal vat band. So we're going to install one of those today and see how it works. All right, let's get to it. So let's get these opened up. So this, I believe, yes, this is the power adapter. Now this is only going to adjust the peak temperature. So if you don't want it to be as hot, if it's getting warmer outside, you can turn it down, or you can max it completely out. But this only adjusts the peak. The actual thermostat that's on the vat band right here is actually what controls your temperature. So let's open this up. All right, so this is the actual vat band right here. And this is supposed to be the new upgraded one because they have one that was, I think the old one was 12 or 13 inches. This one's supposed to be 16 inches long. So let's take a look. And the new one also has, you'll see the 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on here. The old one I think had 3. This one's supposed to be much more flexible, a lot easier to use. So let's see here, put it on. Yeah, so I think the actual heat band itself is what they're saying is 16 inches, which is pretty close. From this area to this is 16 inches long. And this little guy right here is your thermostat. And you can control the temperature by having these away from the vat, which will max out the temperature on this, or you have it touching the vat and it'll go cooler. So that's supposed to be a pretty nice feature of this. And looking at their videos online, you can change this out once this stops being sticky. If you're taking it off and on, you can use just the aluminum heating tape that you can get at a big box store or a hardware store and put that back on. So all right, in here are your, this is, and they said they had upgraded this kit a little bit too and gave you a couple stickers, so you have more than one to put over this. So it's kind of crazy. It looks kind of weird, but this actually goes over the top of the thermal band once it's on your vat. So pretty cool. And then here is what I was talking about. They actually include a piece. So this is that aluminum foil tape you can use to replace this piece of black tape if you need to. And they said that was fine to use that conductive tape, it's fine. And then this is a thermostatic strip. So you can put on there, it has the numbers. You can see there it's not reading much because it's cold in here still. Okay, and I'm not sure if this is in Fahrenheit or Celsius. I don't know. I guess we'll see when we get this all set up. Now, one of the main things they recommended is using alcohol and a green scuff pad to clean off any resin, and I do have a little resin on here. They said that adhesive will not stick if there's any resin on it at all. So, let me get some alcohol here. Wipe this off. I'm just gonna wipe it off first, and then now this is going to go pretty much from here all the way around to the inside over here, so wipe it off good. And they include this little scuff pad because they want you to do a little scuff on it too, because it's imperative that there's no old resin on here. And if you scuff this off, your powder coat that's on this aluminum, it's not really going to hurt anything. It'll just stick better. So that should be good. Make sure that's all dry. It does take the alcohol a little bit longer to dry and evaporate in this cold temperature, that's for sure. Okay, that looks pretty good. It looks clean, nice and clean. I'll just kind of dry fit this and see. So you'll notice too that I'm going to put the band opposite of the drain. I don't really want to have to worry about pouring this over it. You want to keep the resin off this. This is all resin safe, but I don't want to have a bunch of, be worried about it a bunch. So I'm not sure exactly. That's not bad. I want it to where I can easily adjust this thermostat because I have a feeling as cold as it is, I'm gonna have to max it out pretty good. So now this is another thing, this other tail piece, they said you could cut that off, and I'm probably gonna cut it off about right here. This is for, this area is if you have there's another addition you can add on to this. For the power, you can have this magnetic strip that'll click it on and off, kind of like a MacBook. So I'm gonna trim that off and I'll be right back. Okay, had to go digging for something to cut this with. I have this up. Put it about right there, I think. Right there. Cut off about that much. So it's not a problem to cut this. What you do not want to cut is any of this. Obviously they were saying, you know, you don't want to cut into this, and you can trim this up just a little bit if you had to on your vat, but they don't really recommend it. Just kind of leave it as it is if you can, if you have a room. Every vat's going to be probably a little bit different. I think most of these larger vats are pretty similar. Something to mention on this is the medium vat kit for the length, and this is for a Anycubic Photon Mono X 6K, the PMX 6K. Just to kind of give you a reference for size, because they have 3 different sizes. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. And I think I'm going to start back here with this one, because this is where I'm most worried about it being correct. And they just recommended peeling it off, you know, a little bit. And you can work this quite a bit. These are pretty flexible, and the one thing they did show on their videos, and you should go watch them for more installation tips, but kind of angle that off to the side when you go to clip this. All right, make sure that's on the back side for the drain, and I'm gonna put this about right there. Their biggest thing is just make sure that you're keeping your bottom edge at the bottom of your vat. So that's all looking pretty good. And this can be taken off and replaced a little bit, it looked like in their videos. And they were using pencils or wooden sticks to kind of push this in place. But this is looking pretty good. I'm not super concerned about it. There's no bubbles in it, so that looks pretty good. So then the next thing is just make sure you're placing this, you know, where you want, and that looks about right, you know, even with the bottom or just a little above. Looks pretty good. You can see you can kind of place it and move it again. Just make sure you're not getting a lot of bubbles under there, because if you have any bubbles, it's just not going to heat in that area. So you're going to make sure you're bubble free as much as you can be. And the other thing they were saying is your adhesive on this will really set and stick the first time you heat it. So especially in this temperature right now, it's not going to be wanting to move too much. All right, got a little bit of bubble going on there. Trying to keep the bubble out and get it underneath. I may just trim this top just a hair, just because it's not wanting to go around this corner very well. Just getting a little bit of a bubble right there. And they also said too, you can actually, this one is more flexible, you can actually fold this over itself if it's a little too long. But I want to have as much heating area as I can because it's so cold here in the wintertime. So I need to have as much heat as I can possibly get. Well, I think I'm gonna have to, on mine, I'm gonna have to trim the top just a little bit. I hope I'm keeping this on the screen so you guys can see it. It's kind of hard to work around a camera. Alright, one more time. And this is going to be stretched and pulled pretty good. It has a, I don't know if you can really see it on the camera very well, but there's a pretty good fabric texture, and there's some kind of a reinforced fabric in this tape. That's pretty strong. So don't worry about tearing it. There's plenty of movement in it. I think I'm just going to trim that just a hair if I have to. So I think I'm just going to give it one tiny little cut right here, just so it'll go around the corner. Right there. I'm not going to keep fighting it. That's kind of where I want it, really. So. And I think if you do have an issue with these bands, you can just order just the band as well, if you need to, if something happens. But that ought to be pretty good. That's a pretty good fit. So I didn't really even cut it. I just kind of stretched it around that corner. The X-Acto knife didn't even really cut that. It would have, but that looks good, and that's pretty tight. Okay. So they were saying just, come back and make sure you're not over the edge and it feels good. It's down nice and tight. And then this you can adjust. Like I said, if it's down like this is going to be the most moderate temperature. If you have it out and away from the band like this is your actual thermostat. This will actually crank the heat up as high as it'll go. So I'm probably just going to leave it off for now. We're just going to see what happens. All right, so the next step is to put one of these tapes over the top just to help protect it. And most of the time they said they would use a little cut over the thermostat, but this looks like this is not even really long enough. I guess I'm going to start with this one and then I'll cut the second one to fit. So come back here. And some of them they're wrapping around, but I think because mine have the little dots that go into the printer face, I'm going to put mine just right at the top. And I'm just going to trim that to fit. And they were giving 2 tapes out for this now, so you could cut and replace pieces if you need to, but this just goes over the top to help protect the band. Here, I'm just gonna give this a cut. Be careful not to cut the band itself. Here, I think will be good enough. It's going to be this will be underneath the handle, so I don't think that's going to be as big of an issue. All right, that side looks good. Okay, let's go over here. Now this one, they recommend just doing a little cut right here on your tape. So I've got to kind of figure out how long. I'm not going to go all the way back. I'm just going to kind of come right here. There. Cut about this much. Got 2 things to cut for, so not sure how much this is going to do. I think maybe I will just do this because I'm just protecting the band. So I think I'm just going to cover this. I don't think the resin is going to be as big of a deal. Let's just do this. There's not really any reason to go past all these wires and that insulation, so we're just going to go here, I think. And I guess if you wanted to put a piece of tape here, you can, but there's not really anything to protect. The only thing exposed is that one little piece of the band right there. So that's it. Then you have a couple little fittings to put together. And I'm gonna have to go find a little screwdriver, so I'll be right back. Okay, so we got this little screwdriver now. And those could be a little bit more, stripped a little bit more. And this is just a silicone insulation, so it comes off with a fingernail pretty good. If you have some strippers, that works fine too. They were explaining in there, especially with this being DC voltage, it doesn't matter which one goes to what. They're both the same. So get them in there. Tighten them down good. All right, so then when you take this off your machine, you just have this little connection and you can just plug it in right here, and that's it. All right, so I'm gonna get this all plugged in and put on my resin printer and just put some resin in and see what happens. So you can see here I have my resin enclosure and I have my printer inside here. I was warming the printer up with the resin on the inside here. I have the resin in here. And this is just kind of help with the heat, keep the warmth in there and keep a little of the cold out. I had this open and I was just preheating with a 1500 watt heater, and with it being 40 degrees or 5 degrees Celsius, it takes 15 to 20 minutes to warm everything up to about 80 degrees. So the resin here is still only about 70, so we're gonna see how well this works. Now, from what I've seen online, this vat system is not really recommended for warming the resin up from nothing, but if you're within that 70 degree range Fahrenheit, or it'd be about 25 degrees C, I think, it should warm that resin up for no problem. So we're gonna put some resin in and see what happens. All right, have the vat reinstalled. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put some resin in here. I'm printing just a small figure today, so I don't really need to fill it up. I didn't even need near that much resin, but that's okay. I'll just leave that in there. And the Vat Band, I already have this on. I have the thermostat off, and I also have this maxed all the way up. And it is getting warm already, so let's see where we're at here. So 23.9 C or 75 Fahrenheit. So let's see what the resin looks like. The resin is pretty cold. The resin is at 57 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 C. So I'm gonna put this on and see how long it takes. I'm also gonna put this on real quick and we'll see if this is either Fahrenheit or Celsius. All right, we'll be back in a little while. I'm gonna see how long this takes to warm up to temperature. Actually, I'll probably put my phone on so we can see this. So a couple things with this. It took about 10 minutes for this to warm up, which is not too bad. That enclosure was only 45 degrees or so. So I thought that was fairly quick to bring the resin up to temperature. The resin was obviously warmer on the side with the heat strip on it as opposed to the back. I mean, it was a few C different, and I've got better numbers here in just a minute. The thing I did notice is a little temperature strip. I ended up just peeling that off later. It never really seemed to work properly, and having an infrared thermometer was fine. The other thing I realized too here, I was trying just to kind of stir the resin up a little bit just to see if that would help, make a difference with even heating. But once this actually got stabilized later on in the process, it really didn't matter. And I'm sure part of that was just the build plate going in and out. And that was another thing that I had messed up on that, and I made a note of that later, is I should have had the build plate down in here warming it at the same time. Would have taken longer because it would have been trying to warm up that thick piece of aluminum at the same time, but it would have probably made the temperature more stable across the whole thing. So here you can see that it did finally warm up pretty good. It was still a little cooler in the back, but at this time I was about ready to go ahead and just hit print and just let it go. Okay, so after about 10 minutes, the temperature rose to a little over 30 C in the front and about 20-25 in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and hit print. I'm going to leave the cover off because I want to check temperatures kind of along the way. With the cover on, it blocks the infrared thermometer, so it won't work. So I'm going to leave the cover off. I'm going to close the cover on the enclosure and just see what happens. So here I have 9 different slides showing you the temperatures, where I had the peak thermostat, where I had the vat thermostat. First thing I did was put the vat thermostat up against the vat. The next thing is I moved the max peak to about the middle from max. So I cut it down about halfway. And then right about here was the last main change I did. At about 250 on the layers, I moved it down between 4 and 5 on the max peak thermostat, and that's kind of where I left it. Everything started to stabilize at this point, and it printed really well and stayed nice and consistent on the temperature, really. Okay, let's see how this little mini turned out. It looks like I printed successfully. I printed just a small one just as a quick test with a thermal Vat Band to see how the temperatures worked, and it stayed within range like it needed to, even though it was fairly cold in here. So I'm going to pull this out and throw it in the wash and cure and see how it works. All right, so here I'm just cleaning out the vat real quick. I just wanted to see what kind of a headache it was going to be to have those wires hanging off of the vat, and really wasn't a big deal. Putting it on the opposite side worked really well, and using the binder clip to pull the wires together works great. Another option is just to clip those shorter and just make your plug closer to the tank. Here's a little mini I printed. Came out perfect. There were no flaws other than my mistakes where I had the supports a little too close. So all in all, the thermal Vat Band works really well. It does exactly what you need to do. Once you kind of figure out, the temperature you need and what settings you want, it works really well. It took me a few minutes, it took me about an hour fiddling with it to get the thermostat right, the peak set right, and to get everything to where the resin was fairly stable. It worked really well. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, thanks.